All right, so we're diving deep this time.
Nope.
Yeah, right into the thick of it.
Mm-hmm.
The Vietnam War, specifically the Battle of Dak Tu.
Okay.
And to guide us, you've brought along a YouTube video from the Militology channel.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it gets...
They do good work.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
It gets intense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really shows you the brutal reality of jungle combat.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because it's, we could look at this as just another war story, but
Right.
the Battle of Dak Tu, I think it has a lot to teach us about the Vietnam War as a whole.
Okay.
Like, we can look at things like the terrain, how each side used the jungle, to their advantage, the human cost of it all.
Yeah. And speaking of the terrain, the video doesn't waste any time, like, dropping us right into the jungles of Vietnam in 1967.
Hmm.
And this isn't some, walk in the park, right? This is
No.
dense triple canopy jungle
Oh, yeah.
during monsoon season.
Brutal.
I can practically feel the humidity through the screen.
Yeah, and that's really the thing to remember here.
Mm.
The environment, it's almost like it's another combatant in all of this.
Oh, wow.
U.S. soldiers, they earned the nickname elephant soldiers in
Wow.
Vietnam.
I've heard that, yeah.
And for good reason. I mean, they were carrying over 100 pounds of gear
Oh, man.
through this just unforgiving terrain.
Yeah.
Mud, pouring rain.
Can't imagine.
And that's before you even factor in, the enemy that could be hidden anywhere.
Right, right. So not exactly a walk in the park.
No.
But strategically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
what made this region, this specific region,
Right.
so important?
Well, the Central Highlands, they were absolutely critical for the North Vietnamese Army, the NVA,
Okay.
because you've got the Ho Chi Minh Trail, right, from their main supply route,
Right through there.
right through this region.
Right.
So control of that, it meant control of the flow of men, material,
Everything.
everything. So it was high stakes,
Yeah.
which is why the U.S., they were so focused on what they called search and destroy missions.
Right. Trying to, disrupt
It's
everything.
just seek out and engage the enemy, disrupt their ability to operate.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while there, it seemed like it was working.
Really?
Yeah, the video mentions that the fighting actually died down in the summer of '67.
So, a moment of calm before the storm.
That's one way to put it.
Okay.
But what's really interesting is the NVA, they used that lull to their advantage.
How so?
Well, instead of withdrawing, they doubled down.
Really?
Yeah, they moved their entire 1st Division, about 6,000 soldiers,
Wow.
into the region around Dak Tu.
Okay, so they're playing a completely different game here.
Completely. Long game.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is where that Militology video really, I think, shines.
Yeah.
They've got these maps and diagrams showing how the NVA didn't just occupy the area. They dug in
Oh, yeah.
elaborate tunnels, trenches, bunkers.
Oh, yeah, some of them took months to build.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that tells you a lot about their mindset,
Yeah.
They weren't interested in these quick victories or showy engagements.
They're there to stay.
They were ready for a long fight, and they were going to use the terrain itself as a weapon.
Huh, wow.
This was the complete opposite of the U.S. strategy, really highlights the different approaches to warfare.
Right. Completely different mindsets going into this.
Completely.
Which I guess explains why, as the video kind of grimly tells us, some of the most brutal fighting of the entire war was about to erupt in those very jungles.
Yeah, the stage was set for something.
Oh, man.
Something big.
I bet.
Yeah.
So we've got this, clash of styles brewing here. This patient, almost subterranean approach from the NVA
Right.
versus,
Yeah.
U.S.'s search and destroy, more mobile.
More reactive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how does that play out on the battlefield?
Well, I think it's perfectly illustrated in that first major engagement of this whole thing. The fight for Hill 823
Okay.
and the Militology video, it does a great job of showing this, just how important hills were in this terrain.
Right, because that's
Because you get a vantage point.
one vantage point.
You get a little bit above the trees
Right.
in this dense jungle.
So whoever controls the hills, really controls everything around
It
it.
has the advantage, yeah.
Yeah.
So the fight for Hill 823 becomes this brutal, brutal struggle, right?
Yeah.
U.S. forces are trying to dislodge this dug-in NVA force.
Right.
And what's really interesting here is you see how the jungle itself actually limits the U.S.'s ability to use its, typical firepower.
Right, because you can't just, like...
Can't just call in an airstrike.
It's all, like, under this canopy.
Exactly. It's funny you mentioned the airstrikes, though, because the video mentions that the U.S. actually resorted to using something called beehive rounds in this battle.
Okay, beehive rounds. Now, those sound like not a good time.
They're,
What are those?
So basically, imagine thousands of these tiny steel darts.
Oh, wow.
Packed into an artillery shell.
Brutal.
Basically turning it into this giant shotgun blast.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so brutal, for sure.
Yeah.
But, they were one of the few ways to really inflict damage on enemy positions hidden in that thick jungle.
Right, you gotta, if you can't, like, get a clear shot, you gotta get creative, I guess.
Yeah, every advantage, right, comes at a cost.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah, and as the battle raged on, the NVA, they weren't just content to sit on those hills.
Okay.
They were prepared to strike back in some pretty unexpected ways.
Really?
Yeah, the video, it details this incredibly daring nighttime raid that they launched on dock to airfield.
The one where they managed to take out those C-130s?
Those are the ones, the C-130s.
Oh, man.
Those were the lifeline for the U.S. forces. Bringing in supplies, evacuating the wounded.
Yeah.
So destroying even 2 of them was a major blow.
It's huge.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's that massive explosion the video talks about.
The one that, like, shook the whole area?
Yeah, the NVA, they managed to detonate this hidden cache of C4 explosives.
Oh, wow.
And the blast, it was reportedly one of the largest of the entire war.
Wow.
People felt it for miles.
So this is, like, we're not talking skirmishes anymore.
No.
This is a major, like...
This is a full-on confrontation.
Yeah.
And the NVA, they're not afraid to take the fight right to the U.S.
Right to their doorstep, yeah.
Yeah, and they weren't done yet either.
Oh, no.
No, with the airfield in chaos, the battle shifted to 2 more, like really vital hills.
Okay.
Hill 882 and Hill 875.
And this, this is where the video, it really drives home, like, the horrors of this.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the fight for Hill 882.
Yeah.
It talks about these, like, wave after wave of NVA attacks.
Oh, it was relentless.
Relentless, yeah. And, how do you even begin to defend against that?
Yeah, the NVA, they were employing this tactic known as human wave attacks.
Human wave? What is that?
Basically, you overwhelm the enemy with just sheer numbers.
Oh, wow.
It's brutal, but it's effective.
Especially in that, like, close jungle, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine defending a position knowing that if you give an inch, you might not be able to hold back.
It's terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
So the terrain is still, like, a huge factor here.
Oh, huge factor.
Yeah.
The jungle, it provided cover, right, for the NVA to approach and detect it.
So you don't even know what's coming.
Exactly. And it made it very difficult for the U.S. forces to use their air support.
Right. Well,
or artillery.
It's all, got to be boots on the ground, basically.
It became this very up-close and personal fight.
Grueling. Yeah. And the video says at one point, the U.S. forces on 882, they're surrounded.
Yeah.
Low on ammo, low on water.
Yeah.
They said even the Medevac helicopters were getting shot down trying to get in there.
Couldn't get through.
Oh, man.
It was bad.
And they held out.
They held out.
Wow.
It's a testament to their, resilience.
Wow.
Their courage under fire.
Courage, yeah.
But like you said, that next objective, Hill 875,
right.
That one was going to push both sides to the limit.
I bet. So they're coming off of that, right? That brutal fight for Hill 882.
Yeah.
And now it's like straight into this Hill 875 is like the big one.
Yeah, it really was. And it's almost tragic that one of the first things to go wrong on Hill 875 was actually caused by the U.S. forces themselves.
You're talking about that friendly fire incident.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. The video really, it paints a picture of like the fog of war there.
Oh, total chaos.
Yeah.
U.S. artillery units, they're trying to support the advance, right?
Right.
And they accidentally ended up bombarding their own troops.
On 875?
Hill 875. Yeah, heavy casualties.
Oh, man.
Before they even really engaged with the enemy.
Which just makes everything that happened after that even more
difficult.
Yeah, more difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was that one story, I think the video mentioned it.
Yeah.
About Specialist 4th Class Carlos Lozada.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about, like, bravery in the face of
There's this.
insane circumstances.
So during the NVA assault on Hill 875,
Okay.
Lozada, he finds himself cut off, his position's overrun.
Oh, wow.
And rather than retreat, he decides to hold his ground,
Really?
to cover his comrades,
Wow.
so they could fall back.
So he's buying them time, basically.
He's buying them time, and he managed to hold off like an entire
No way.
NVA assault for a while by
Wow.
himself.
Wow, what a steer.
He allowed his company to escape being totally overrun, but it cost him his life.
Oh, man.
Like John Barnes, he was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his bravery.
And it really makes you think, like, even in all the chaos
Oh.
and, like, just the terrible things that are happening,
Yeah.
that, like, there's still these incredible acts of, like...
Selflessness.
Yeah, selflessness, yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So they win the day, but...
They do, but the video, it doesn't let us forget about,
Yeah.
what it meant.
The cost.
The cost. Yeah, they talk about those wounded soldiers.
Oh, right, on 875.
Stranded for days.
Wow.
Limited medical supplies, exposed to the elements.
Yeah, it's easy to forget, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
That even in victory, it's...
There's a cost.
Yeah, there's always a cost.
And it makes you wonder, was it even a victory?
Right, right.
Yeah, they captured the hills, but at what price?
Over 360 U.S. soldiers killed, if I'm remembering the video right.
Yeah, and over 1,400 wounded.
And even more NVA casualties, right?
Even more, but they weren't routed.
Really?
They were able to withdraw, even launched a counteroffensive that briefly retook Hill 875.
Wow. They wouldn't quit.
They were already planning their next move, the Tet Offensive, just a few months later.
It's like this whole battle is like a mini version of the entire war. Yeah.
Microcosm, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really showed their resilience.
Yeah, the NVA's resilience.
Yeah, their determination.
And they had to have known, like,
Yeah.
that they were facing, like, a much more powerful force, at least.
On
Like,
paper, yeah.
yeah, on paper, yeah.
But they had something else. They had the will.
Yeah, and I think that's something that comes through in this video and in, a lot of the stuff that we look at.
Yeah.
Is that sometimes it's not about who's got the most firepower or the biggest army.
It's about who wants it more.
Yeah, who wants it more?
And they wanted it.
This was their home,
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
well, a lot to unpack here.
A lot to think about.
A lot to think about, yeah.
The Battle of Dak 2, it was a turning point in many ways.
It really does make you rethink, like, how we view victory, how we view, like...
Yeah, the whole conflict.
Yeah, the entire Vietnam War, and I think that's what's so fascinating about diving into these specific battles.
I agree.
We can get so caught up in the bigger picture that we forget about the human stories.
Yeah.
The individual sacrifices, the bravery.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes history so compelling, so important to remember.
It's not just dates and names.
It's people.
And it's people.
Yeah, and hopefully, listener name, this deep dive has given you a little bit of that to chew on, and maybe it'll even inspire you to do a little digging of your own.
There's always more to learn.
There is always more to learn. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep diving deep.